Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. But before we start this episode, I have one more day for my Dancer Kickstarter. It's about a young woman who's a dancer/assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. That is finished Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, so hopefully guys could go check that out. And of course, at the end of the episode, we do the viewer's pick of the week. So be sure in the comments below to let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured in the episode. And of course, like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel. Now, let's jump into the heavier haul this week. I have about 14 books to cover this week. Number 14 is American Vampire 1976 issue 7. This is one of their anthology styled issues, so they did this in the original runs as well. They were never my favorite because it really went smacked in the middle of what was going on in the series, and sometimes it didn't really feel too linear, and that's kind of the same thing here. They're all little short stories after a big moment with Pearl, who knows, maybe dying. I'm like, I want to go back to that story. I don't want the anthology story, so that's why this is a little lower, and that is number 14, and I give that 2 stars. Now, moving on to number 13, which is, I'm sad to see this so low, because I really enjoyed the series as it was beginning, but now I feel like it's turning its wheels a bit, spinning its wheels, and that is Scumbag issue 7. And like I said, spinning its wheels, it's a lot of the same things that we've been seeing from the series thus far. It's, you know, our main character, he does something nice and then he does something bad. And it's always the same cliffhanger of every issue, and I don't feel like there's much progression of the series. And a big problem is I don't really like the villain, and that's why it doesn't really feel like the plot is moving that much either. So I don't know how long I'm going to stick with this series, and I'm sad because, like I said, those beginning issues I really loved, and I felt like the book had a lot of potential, but it's just really slowing down for me. Artwork is still good. I still think there's a really promising concept here, so I do want to give it a couple issues or so, but if it keeps doing the same thing over and over again, I do think I'm going to drop this for the time being. So I'm giving that 2 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12. I am sad to see some of these books in the bottom here, and that is Batman the Detective issue 1, a book honestly I was looking forward to. I'm a huge Tom Taylor fan, and I enjoy what he's done with Batman in the past, at least the Injustice series, and I was looking forward to this, but this didn't really feel like Tom Taylor. You know, he's really known for doing some wonderful character work, and I feel like that's what misses the beat here, is that I just couldn't get into the characters here, and I feel like you're just kind of thrown into the series, and there wasn't really anything different character-wise here for me. I like the ending being that Batman finds out that the villain is trying to kill the people he has saved in the past. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting concept that I wish actually was in the beginning of the issue to kind of get into the story, but it really didn't do enough for me, especially just because there's so many Batman books out there. If this was the only Batman miniseries, I'd probably give it another issue, but I'm getting so many Batman titles, I feel like there's not a lot of room for a lackluster issue 1 for me. And even the artwork, I'm not a huge Kubert fan. It definitely reminiscent of old school Batman, which is cool, but just didn't really do it for me. So I'm giving that 2 stars, and that is number 12, I believe. Moving on to number 11, a book I was probably most anticipating this week, and it is much lower than I expected. And that is Spider-Man, Spider's Shadow, issue 1. Big Chip Zdarsky fan. I feel like he's been doing really great, and we're going to talk about other books he came out with this week. But this one felt very by the numbers, and I was shocked because I really loved Chip's life story Spider-Man book, and it was the opposite of that. I felt like there were so many nice twists and turns, but still reminiscent of what we love about Spider-Man, and here there just wasn't any twists and turns. It was the angst that we all know from Peter Parker, and yes, now he is the Venom. That's what happens in the end of the issue, but he's kind of violent to everybody he knows and loves, and it just wasn't entertaining. There was no soul for me here. The artwork even was a bit cartoonier than I expected. I feel like there could have been more focus there. So overall, I gave this 2 stars. I will be picking up the next issue just because I am a very big Spider-Man fan, but that's going to really determine if I'm going to pick up the rest of this mini-series. I really do hope it gets more personality in this issue, or this series in general. So I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Children of the Atom, issue 2. I like the first issue a little bit more, but it's so hard. I just talked about this with Batman. There are so many X-Men books. There's even more X-Men books coming out. You have Way of X coming out in the next couple of weeks. You have the X-Corp book coming out. There's even more. You have the Hellfire Gala. There's so many X-Men books. There's also little room on your pull list sometimes. And Children of the Atom is not a bad book. I like the characters for the most part, but there's nothing that's really grabbing me to say I must read that next issue. And even though I think there's potential for a really interesting, different story with these mutants not being on Krakoa and having kind of a more YA storyline, I feel is really fascinating. And again, potential of a really new dynamic team, but I'm not feeling any of those beats here. And, again, too many X-Men books. I can't keep all the X-Men books on my pull. So I don't think I'm going to get the next issue of Children of the Atom. Again, it's not bad, but it also just didn't wow me. So I'm giving that 3 stars. Artwork is pretty solid, though, overall, even though the ending is pretty much the same ending as that first issue. So you guys will have to tell me how the series goes. But I am going to be dropping that one. And that is number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, which is Batman Urban Legends issue 2. This, all these anthologies are always hard to review because I love the Jason Todd story. I've been blown away by it. Chip Zdarsky, that one of his books, one of his many books that came out this week, and I loved it. I love the emotions in his character, the way we go back to his past and how it's related to his present, his relationship with Batman. I just think everything's great with that. The Oracle story was pretty much the same beats that we've gotten from the previous Batgirl book. I believe it is the same writer, and I think the same artist as well for at least some of those issues, and it was fine. It wasn't bad. It was cool to see kind of a life in a day of Oracle, but I do think other titles have done a better job at Oracle's story. We'll actually talk about another one this week that came out, and even the Jason Todd story, I thought, did a little better on that. But it was cool to see Steph. It was cool to see Nightwing. It was a fun story. Then as we get along, I'm not a fan of Grifter. I'm not a fan of The Outsiders. So I don't feel invested in those stories. So it's a little harder to review these. And also, it's an expensive book. But I'm still sticking around for Jason Todd. So I really looking forward to seeing where that goes. It's 6 parts. And what I do like is that it's not just every issue's Grifter. Not every issue is going to be Outsiders. We're going to get a Tim Drake story. We're getting other Bat characters. So if you don't like this issue, you might really love the next issue. So overall, I'm giving that 3 stars. And that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Serial issue 3. And this is just a fun Terry Moore book. It's very easy to read, honestly. They're always very quick reads. I don't know what the page count is for this, but we learn a little bit more about a serial killer. There's this really interesting scene with her and her mother has dementia. That was really interesting, and I guess getting into the motivations of the serial killer a bit more, and Zoe being on this person's tail. The dialogue work is always so great for any Terry Moore book, and it really shines here. Even if the plot's a little slow, I'm very intrigued to see where this series is going to go, because I really don't know. So overall, I'm giving that 3.5 stars. Artwork, as always, love the black and white style, and just the small beats and ticks of facial expressions that really work here. So like I said, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. I'm going to take a sip of water, and then we're going to move on to number 7. All right, moving on to number 7, which is Fantastic Four, issue 30, right? We're up to issue 30. Not a bad King in Black tie-in. I liked it. Some of the dialogue was a little off for me, especially with Sue, but I enjoyed it. I love the family stuff, and I liked how King in Black really got into some of the family drama between Val and Franklin and even Alicia and her kids, and especially Mr. Fantastic and the Thing, and then Sue and the Human Torch. And yeah, they really delve into it nicely. The artwork was superb for this issue as well. The nitpick, King in Black's over, so this was definitely delayed, and it feels delayed with the issue, but I think it really did a good job at hitting home some of the Fantastic Four storylines instead of just King in Black, even though I was not a fan that the end of the issue where you should have the big battle between the Thing and the rest of the family and obviously Human Torch. They just say, hey, go read King in Black issue 5 if you want to find out what happens next. I'm like, no, you just skipped a part. I didn't love that. I do think it ended a bit abruptly in there. Again, this wasn't smooth sailing the issue with some of the dialogue and structure of the issue, but I thought emotionally it was a good one, and artwork was really solid for this book, from the action to the emotional scenes here. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Daredevil issue 29, and this one ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. It definitely delves into everyone's story pretty well, so we get to see Elektra training that little girl. Love the little thematics of, how to be strong and not to be weak, and delving into some of the more Kingpin aspect and neighborhood aspect that I've kind of missed with Daredevil being in jail. So that was really cool. I love Elektra as Daredevil. The actual Kingpin stuff, I was a little confused by, just because I've just started picking up Daredevil, and I haven't read those middle issues, so it wasn't as new reader friendly as it has been with the actual sectors of New York. It is pretty easy to jump into, but it wasn't something I was as invested in. And then Daredevil, him being poisoned was really interesting, and him being left for dead. Is he dead? Who knows? You do have a new Daredevil, so anything's possible here. Artwork is always really, really good, and just a really well-balanced issue overall, and I've been really enjoying this book. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Thor issue 14, the finale of the Donald Blake storyline, and it's a really quick read. It's an action issue of Thor and his family going up against Donald Blake, and Donald Blake being humiliated, and there's an opportunity for Thor to kill him, and he lets Loki, of all people, to kind of give him his final, thing that, jail time, I guess. And I thought that was really interesting, and that he becomes the god of lies. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then Odin, that was really interesting to bit as well, where Odin's ready to kind of kill Donald Blake and take charge, and Thor's like, it's my role to do that now. Step away, Dad. So there's a lot of interesting little character moments here that make it a really good action issue, because the action means something. And, the grittiness of Klein's artwork really works for this as well, especially the more emotional moments with Donald Blake just kind of giving up. Very solid issue for me, so I'm giving that 4 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Mighty Morphin issue 6, so Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and a really solid issue. I thought they really packed a lot into this one. We get a bit of Zordon's past and the connection of that new character who is from Zordon's race, so that was really cool. But I like the small character beats, and also noticing that this team still doesn't really quite know a lot about each other, because we have Rocky, who's talking about his sisters, just collecting bottle caps for her and just trying to have some sort of normalcy and to try to forget that their family might die. So we have this really emotional moment, and Kim's like, I didn't even know you had a sister. He's like, I have 5 siblings. And I thought that was a really good moment. And then you pivot to Tommy and Kimberly fighting over Matt and saying, well, did you know that Matt was the Green Ranger? She's like, no, but why do you keep wanting me to know? Is that going to make anything better? So that was really good. And then we get to the more action-y side of the issue, where it looks like the Green Ranger, Matt, is teaming up with the villain. So it was really moved really well, this issue, and does what I think Ryan does best with Power Rangers, and really gets into the emotional crust of the book and series, while still developing some really good action and plot ranger superhero aspect like we get at the end. And again, you know, the idea of what's going to happen to their hometown, and even some more realistic aspect of armies going against the Power Rangers as well. Artwork also very reminiscent of Daniele's artwork, who I think is one of the strongest Power Rangers artists and artwork to date. So I really like the kind of more anime style of this as well. So overall, very solid issue, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, one of the stronger Iron Man issues for me, and that is Iron Man issue 8. And this is a fully Patsy issue. And, you know, I love my girl Patsy, so I really enjoyed this one where we get into really Patsy's head. It's a little psychedelic, even, where we get to see her in her high school days, you know, obviously going back to the golden age of Patsy Walker's comics, and then delving really deep into her mythology with her ex-best friend or her mom controlling that comic book story. So there's a lot of interesting tidbits here as Patsy tries to take control, as there's these action pieces with the other heroes, with War Machine and Misty Knight, which really helps bring some action there, and even give some weight to this villain as well, as we're kind of definitely more in Patsy's head, and really delving deep, not even just into the Patsy Walker Golden Age comics, but also her time in hell, and how that's really affected her mentally, and how that's affected her character. And it's just such a really wonderful deep dive. And even though Cafu doesn't do the artwork here, the replacement artist does a really good job at capturing those moments and making this a really somber issue, even though Tony's not in it. It's an Iron Man book, but Tony's not fully in it, and that's kind of the big revelation in the end of the issue, that Tony's gone. So what has happened to him? So really solid stuff here. 4 stars for me. Really enjoyed this one as a Patsy Walker fan. So giving that number 3 on my list. Now, number 2, blown away by this book. I'm actually going to do a whole separate video kind of taking a deep dive into the events of this issue. But that is the Joker issue 2. There is a lot that happens here. And like I said, I'm going to do a whole video on Barbara Gordon and Jim's relationship in this issue. We have the Court of Owls reveal, and even a new Bane. So there's a lot that happens here. But I actually thought this was even stronger than the first issue, because the first issue is really building up to the moment of Jim Gordon wanting to kill the Joker. Now it's putting the players into place, where we get to see, will Jim have to team up with this new Bane? Will he team up with the Court of Owls? And then also the building blocks between Barbara Gordon and Jim, because now Jim has at least revealed that he's always knew that Barbara was Batgirl and Oracle, and how does that change their dynamic, which has become really personal and even gritty from the monologuing of this book about money and his family. And there's a really interesting moment between Jim and Barbara where Jim's like, you know, I didn't tell Batman this, but I might kill the Joker. Barbara's like, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I will only do it if you tell me to. So that's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see where their relationship's going to go, and where Barbara's moral compass is going to go. Because if that question's there, you know you're going to build up a Barbara Gordon story, morally questioning, will she kill the Joker? So a lot of interesting tidbits here. Artwork was pretty solid for this as well. It's not perfectly my style, but I think it brings in that creepy horror aspect you want for the book. And yeah, I can't wait to see more. This is like, as much as Batman, the flagship, is bringing us so many great Batman mythos tidbits from different sections of Batman, with Bane kind of playing off more of Tom King's run, and then Court of Owls playing off Scott Snyder's run. There's a lot of great stuff happening here, and I really love this issue. So I'm giving that 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Again, look forward to another video delving a little deeper into that issue. Now, moving on to number 1, guys, and that is Power Pack issue 5. I love this series. I'm going to miss this series. I thought the creative team has done such a great job at capturing who the Power Pack is, and does a good job here too. This feels like an outrageous Saturday morning cartoon where we get to see the Power Pack doesn't have their abilities, so they pretend to wear costumes, and Wolverine acts very well, and kind of brings his inner kid to help the Power Pack lure the wizard and trick the wizard into getting their powers back. And I just loved every beat, every character moment in this issue, and it was just pure fun. And I really feel like everyone's voices was able to shine. That's been the biggest success of this Power Pack series. Is A, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a really fun book. And then B, everyone's voice is so distinct and so much their character. And I think everyone had a really good ending here. I wish we'll see more Power Pack in the end, because I want more from them. I love the Power Pack, and I think they deserve more stories to tell. So hopefully we'll see if we'll get more Power Pack, especially from this creative team. But this was just a blast to read, and overall giving that one 4.5 stars. So let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite comic of the week? And the viewer's pick of the week from last week was Runaways. So here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Definitely follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics like Father Lied Daughter and They Call Her Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. Thanks, guys. Bye.